Chapter 11, Margins of Error. Minutes later, in the living room, the atmosphere was hot and close. Everyone was polite, everyone was calm, but you could have cut the atmosphere with a knife. That's what people say when invisible feelings vibrate in the air, like ions do just before electric storms. Mum and Aunt Gloria were on the sofa. Aunt Gloria held a glass of brandy. Dad was standing, leaning back against the wall near the door. Kat and I stood beside him. The man, a detective sergeant, took notes seated at the table. His boss, the woman, had taken another chair and was sitting in the middle of the room. She was thin and short, with a blue skirt and jacket and a white blouse, and her eyes moved quickly around the room like lightning strikes. First, she said she was Detective Inspector Pierce and was in charge of finding Salem. Then she asked questions: who everyone was in the family, why Aunt Gloria was visiting, and why she was planning to move to New York. Then she asked to see the contents of Salem's backpack. She took things out one by one. I looked on carefully because in good detective stories, what people leave behind and don't leave behind can be a clue to where they've gone. There was a spare sweater, a pair of jeans, a pair of socks, underwear, pyjamas, another sweatshirt, and a tiny towel. These didn't tell me very much. Then there was a battered paperback entitled Murder at 12,000 Feet, a guidebook to New York, brand new with no creases and a tiny address book. Finally, there was a Swiss Army knife and a key ring with a model of the Eiffel Tower on it, but no keys. There were no wash things like a toothbrush because they were still in the bathroom, I remember, on the shelf above the basin. Detective Inspector Pierce held up the empty key ring with her eyes scrunched up. Aunt Gloria explained that Salem had brought the key ring back from a school trip from Paris. Then she had rented out her house in Manchester and given all but her own set of keys to the tenants. At present, she said, Salem had no keys to anywhere. There was silence. Then the inspector took over where Kat and I were standing. You two were the last to see Salem, I understand, she said. Kat told her in a quiet voice, not like her normal voice, all about the strange man, the free ticket, tracking a pod and waiting for Salem to come down, and how he hadn't. We should never have left them to get the tickets on their own, Mum said when Kat finished. The inspector's hand waved through the air. What this meant I do not know. Then she turned back to Kat. You say you tracked the pod? Kat nodded. For half an hour you did nothing but stare up and watch the London Eye go round? Well, Kat considered, we walked back so as to be able to see it better. If you're too close, you can't see the pods go round properly without getting them muddled. And we chatted a bit. Without getting them muddled, Inspector Pierce repeated. She interlocked her hand and rested the chin on them. We chatted a bit. You don't have to believe us. It's not a question of believing or disbelieving, but we tracked it. We did. We're sure, aren't we, Ted? Sure, 100%. No, Kat's eyes and lips scrunched up. Sure, 98%, yes, I said. The inspector looked at me without saying anything. The corners of her lips turned up, which meant she was slightly amused. Then she tapped her nose with her interlocking fingers. So, she said, you'd allow for a margin of error. Only a small one, I said, 2%. 2%? In every human observation, I explained, there isn't a margin of error. This is because our senses are not foolproof. In fact, some people believe that 100% certainty is impossible to achieve. I stopped and put my head on one side. As humans, we cannot be sure that the sun will rise the next day even. Our assumption that it will do so is arrived by a process of induction. This is a process where probability, based on past observations, allows us to predict things like weather patterns. I've had enough of this, Aunt Gloria interrupted. Sunrise, sunset, up and down wheels, tracking pods. This is not a fun fair. This is about my son, my only son, and he's missing. What I want to know is what's being done about it. We're doing all we can, Inspector Pierce said. She unlocked her fingers and smoothed her skirt. I know you're fretting. Fretting? You make it sound as if I've lost a handbag. It's early days. He's only been missing a few hours, and in the vast majority of cases, young people who disappear like Salem are found within 48 hours. 48 hours? We'll miss our flight to New York. 48 hours, but usually sooner. But from the word go, we take the disappearance of minors very seriously, and that's why I'm here. He's not a minor, he's my boy. Mum put an arm around her. Glow, she whispered. We're doing everything possible, Inspector Pierce repeated. Such as, Dad said quietly. Everyone turned to look at him. The inspector sighed. We've begun checking the CCTV footage of the pods. No camera can see everything or everybody, but there's no sign of anything untoward happening that morning. Just the normal shots of normal tourists enjoying the view. We've also been taking statements from other people who rode the eye at the same time, Unfortunately, the numbers run into 300 plus and we can only check the ones who pay by credit card. We've no way of checking those who pay cash. But again, so far nobody remembers the boy matching your son's description. We've also checked hospital admissions. Aunt Gloria I went round and large at the word hospital, but nothing. Perhaps he's still just lost, said Dad. That's indeed the likeliest explanation, Inspector Pierce said. There's a pause. Perhaps everyone was doing what I was imagining where I was lost. I pictured Salem lost on London's underground system, getting on and off trains, wandering down passages, not sure if he could be on the north or southbound train, confused by the colours, not knowing that black stood for the Northern Line, our line. I was thinking how, if I'd sat next to him on the tube earlier that day instead of Cat, I could have explained all about the London Underground map being topological and how you are meant to read it. And then Salem would have found his way home with no problem and perhaps be here now. We need some more personal details, Inspector Pierce said. She leaned towards Aunt Gloria. I'd like to ask you some private questions. Mum got up. Let's leave, she said to the rest of us. Dad opened the living room door, leading Cat out by the elbow, but Aunt Gloria grabbed Mum by the hand. You stay, Faith, I need you, please. Mum sat down again. She stared over at me as I waited to see if Aunt Gloria would need me too. Mum mouthed something, but no sound came out. It was as though she was deaf and dumb and able to lip read. I blinked. Then she said the word out loud. Scoot. That was the second time that day that Mum had told me to go away. I shuffled out after Dad and Cat went into the kitchen with my hand flapping. Dad closed the kitchen door behind me. The police would find out more than I would, and it wasn't fair. A heavy feeling, like you get when you eat calories more than you can burn off efficiently, came down inside me. Cat had her face pressed against the fridge freezer. A tear trickled down her cheek and she was punching the side of her head with her fist. This meant she had the same feeling. It was called frustration extreme.